I'm Ken Park, sitting and visiting on some old memories and talking about some great experiences that came as a part of being part of a skate scene at a time that it was just flourishing. And we're talking about some of the covers that you're seeing here. And this particular cover was shot in a really exciting demo that we did in Australia and a tour of Australia. But this one being in front of the Opera House and everything was pretty special. And I was just mentioning that it was kind of that unique time. The other one that comes to mind is Brazil, where it was an outdoor demo. So you had all of the kind of unique aspects of the way that we used to skate outdoors all the time, but then you were enclosed in such a way that it felt like you were also in a stadium. So it had both of those feels to it. And I just remember that energy from the crowd just started to feed our skating, and it was awesome.
Who else was at this demo with you?
So Gator was there. I believe Christian was there. Lee Ralph was there.
About 10 guys, or?
Yeah, I think maybe even less. Maybe about 8 guys.
Okay.
A bunch of locals, which the local scene in Australia is just so inspiring. They just the passion for the sport and their dedication to kind of they have their own feel to it, and so you felt like you were visiting someplace really special, especially the way that they set up this demo.
Awesome. So David Walsh, who's an Australian photographer, took this photo for an English magazine, the RAD, aka Read and Destroy magazine. That's awesome.
Yeah, and David was great, and you got to remember back then. One of the things that I tell people is that, we went to all, especially when we get to the Munster, but like I remember going to these, pretty high, highly attended events, but every single time you'd walk away with relationships with people that were just skaters, they're just passionate, they're local skaters, and they'd invite you to come back and have beers at the local pub, or they'd invite you to some event that was happening, some party that night, small party, house party type of thing. And it just, the skate community back then we never really didn't consider ourselves the celebrities that we would now. When you look back and you say, wow, look at all the people watching me. But the reality is, at the time, the skate scene is such an accepting environment, especially globally, that you always felt like you're walking into a community you're already a part of, and it's just a matter of meeting new people. And David's one of those people. And it's just, you have so many. My relationship with Grant Britton started way before I was really, worthy of being, shot for photographs, because Grant was the skate park manager at Del Mar Skate Ranch. But it's like I've been in such great relationships with so many of the photographers that have shot the different shots along the way that it's almost like friends, shooting friends type of thing. So.
What do you remember about the Munster cover for Skateboard magazine?
Well, I think, any time that you went to Europe, getting any coverage while you were in Europe was a special moment, especially because there was some really cool stories. The one is, like, Mike McGill went and learned in Bourges, Bourges was a summer camp that you would go to in France, but everybody that went to Bourges came from the Munster competition, and then usually spent a month and a half. But everybody that would go into the European scene would come back with something spectacular. What's more spectacular than hearing that Mike had landed his first 540?
Yeah.
And so it was almost like mythical hearing that, and others that were trying it at the time. But Mike landed it, and he came back and he started doing 540s, and it was just such a paradigm shift for all of us to think that now there is this new, inventory of tricks we could all be pursuing. Of course, I had my beloved, as you see in all of these, my beloved
all inverts, yeah.
And this reminds me because, not too long ago, I was at a Boom Boom Huck Jam in Long Island just as a spectator. Actually, I was in the one in New Jersey, and I went backstage and I was talking to Tony, and he goes, "I'd like you to skate in Long Island." And I got into my business mode for many years, so that I really wasn't skating that much. I was putting all my time and effort into building a business. And I remember how excited I was and nervous I was. I had to go back, and there's like three days, I believe, between the one in Jersey and getting back to, going back to Long Island. So I had to go practice for 3 days straight, just trying to do it. But what I'm getting back to is that I was on the ramp, getting more and more comfortable, making believe that I'm back to where I needed to be. And Tony was just feeding me because I did an invert. And he goes, okay, now do one of these. And so the first one he said is do a tuck knee. And then he said, do a 1 foot. And he said, oh, do a finger flip. I'll do a 360 varial. And I kept doing them like Tony's asking me. I'm full with adrenaline like I was doing it yesterday. But the funny part of it is that, so the final one was a 360 varial invert. I landed, but I'm going down the wall and I kind of tweaked sideways, fell back and knocked myself out in front of the entire, Nassau Coliseum, including, by the way, my new wife and my kids. They've never seen me skate, so I'm knocked out on the bottom of the ramp. The paramedics come back out, they put me on a stretcher, they wheel me into the back room, and my family's just going, what? They're thinking I died or something. So when I see this trick particularly, especially the way it's shot there, it reminds me of that moment, because it was like Tony pushing me to do, some of the tricks that I had been known to do. So.
Did you ever learn the 540, the McGhost?
Yeah, actually it was my final tour in Europe, and I landed it in Spain, and I landed it, the first time I made it, I was in Brussels.
Right.
I landed in Brussels, and it was like an all night, I kept going, and it was just me. I was on a demo, and so I just was so close, and I wasn't going to give up, and it must have taken me an hour, a little over an hour and a half of just doing 540s. And every time I got closer, and then I landed it, and it's an amazing moment, because that's one of the tricks that once you land it, it clicks in your head. So I did it at 2 more demos in Europe at the time, and I was really looking forward to the European Championships, but I was skating in, I believe it was Germany, on a very small, tight ramp, and I did one, and I landed the 540, but my back foot was like at an angle, and I didn't break anything, but I definitely tore all of the ligaments in my foot, and that was one of my last hurrahs, to be honest with you, in my pro career, because it took a long time to rehab the whole ankle. I missed the European Championships, which I was really looking forward to, because I thought that was the year that I was really going to be able to place pretty high. And then I came back, and I was in Colorado at the time, and it just kind of, my career just kind of came to not an abrupt end, but a pretty quick end after that, which I have regrets about that, but it all happened for the right reasons.
Yeah.
So.
And now SkateAction cover, another English magazine.
Yeah.
Shot at Tony's ramp.
And that was the other thing about being around Tony and being around Tony's ramp, is that anybody that tried, and once again, this talks about the skate community, the global skate community, but if someone was in the California area and they had the right connections, you get people showing up at Tony's ramp for what was just a daily session, and all of a sudden you've got a full crew coming that might be in town from, Europe or UK or whatever. Mm-hmm. And so in this case, I think this is one of those instances where, the session turned into a global session, even though it was probably just another day at Tony's house.
Yeah.
So. But no, having the luxury of not only skating, I use the term a lot. I skated in the company of giants, and nobody bigger and nobody more respectful than Tony. Yeah. And talk about not mentorship as people talk about it, but Tony was as supportive as a co-skater as you could ever want, because he was probably trying something 3 times harder than what I was trying, but he was just as dedicated to seeing you make your trick that we all were for each other. So it was just, we fed off of that. But when you have like Joe Johnson, Ray Underhill, may he rest in peace, Tony Hawk, Chris Miller, Gator, I mean, these are people that would show up on a daily session basis. You're not going to underperform. You're only going to step up your game. If you didn't, you'd feel like you weren't doing it.
Now that's a one-footed Andrecht here.
Yeah, so that was the one-footed Andrecht. Really became one of my signature moves from the moving away from the traditional invert. The one-footed Andrecht was the first big step for me, and it really opened up a lot of different foot off the board type of tricks.
I can't think of anybody else doing a one-footed Andrecht.
Yeah, no, it was kind of like my signature move. Yeah. And then the eggplant started to become mine, because I just did it different than anyone else.
You did. You wrapped that thing up there.
It was weird, and how that took place. I was skating with Lester Kasai at Del Mar one day, and we just, on a whim, both of us. It was just 2 of us, I think. And there's everyone's skating, but we were sessioning, and for whatever reason, we both got into this discussion about what would it look like if you did it, you tucked your knee in an eggplant, and we just started trying it. And I think because of all the inverts I did, it felt so comfortable. And I think one of the first few that I was mocking it. I wasn't planning on landing it, right? But I went up and it felt so natural, and it felt like I could actually pull it back to my back in a way that reminded me of some of the inverts I did, that all of a sudden I was like, wow, this is cool. I ended up, there's a couple times in my life that I'm pretty proud that I landed the trick that we were trying to learn faster than people that were way more talented and I really looked up to. Lester was one of them. Lester's probably one of the most underrated skaters, I think, in history to a large extent. Because when you see Lester, when you would watch Lester's session, he was smooth. He had the same kind of trick repertoire that Tony would have, and yet he had a lot of the same smoothness and the height. He just had all these unique characteristics that really made his skating truly different and unique from anyone else.
And now Poweredge Photo Annual 2, you've kind of collaged you here, but what type of inverter were you doing there, or is that an amalgamation?
No, it's definitely just a typical, tuck knee invert, and then, I wasn't the most photographed skater of all time, so when I would get a cover, man, I gotta tell you, that was a thrill of a lifetime. I probably enjoyed it more than most because, I skated around guys that were photogenic and every photographer wanted, Tony, Chris Miller. I want to photograph or videographer, take a video of Chris Miller. Chris Miller is, I skated with every day, and the guy is just so damn stylish. And you just go down the list of all the skater and all, that's why I say I skated amongst giants. And the reality is when I got my own cover, my own coverage at all, it was usually pretty special. So I remember when that Poweredge came out, and I was really excited. I do think I was a little disappointed that they did the collage.
Yeah,
you finally get a cover,
takes away from
and
it.
you really want, look at the rad. That's the kind of cover you're dreaming about, right? But
somebody in the art department got a little.
Part of skating was the art, and pushing the edge, and so I wasn't bummed. At the end of the day, I was honored. I'm very humble in the face of what my career brought me, because it was just a passion, just like everybody at that time. We didn't get into this because it was going to make us famous. We got into this because we just loved the pursuit of the next trick. So,
can you recall any classic covers burned into your brain of any of your friends or anything that influenced you early on?
The one that just comes to mind right away when you said that is there was a Thrasher cover of Matt Hensley that I just remembered kind of like was the moment that I realized, wow, street skating is going to take over. I remember thinking that, not take over in a negative way, but it's like, and by the way, I was one of those people who would sit on the edge in Del Mar, they had the reservoir area in front, and that's where they did the freestyle competition. So you had guys like Steve Rocco and Rodney and doing freestyle. And I remember thinking to myself, these guys are amazing. What they're doing with the board is such a distinctively different thing than what we were doing. But then when you saw Matt start skating, and you start seeing him on banks and, doing, ollies over, picnic tables and things like that. It was the first time that it really clicked. Two things clicked. Number one, this is the next evolution of skateboarding, which is exciting, and it was a positive. And then there was the realization that that was not going to be my strength. I knew it. I just wasn't my style. I didn't have the body for it. I didn't have the style for it. I was a power skater. There were certain competitions that, I was starting to get the same kind of height in my backside airs that you would see from Christian and everything, and that was huge for me because I had the body weight to get through it, But that I'd never had the technical gift that, the true street skaters had that were just, it still blows my mind to this day as I watch the evolution of skateboarding. But it's like, if you really look at the park skating and the ramp skating, it's not that different. A lot more, movement as far as 540s and 720s and things of that nature, but it's not that different. But you look at some of the things that the guys are doing on the street courses or just skating in the street in general, and the stairs and the gaps and things like that, it just completely blows my mind. It really does, because it's a different mindset.
Ken, I think that about covers it. Thanks for getting together with us. This has been great.
Thanks for stopping by.